Check. 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 See if that's better. Is this thing on, as they would say? Okay, I actually think that this thing is on. So, if you guys just missed what I was saying, I was talking about it's been quiet on all the fronts as far as any news to be discussing and stuff like that. But obviously, a lot of people think it's thin ice for JJ Whiteside. JJ Ortega-Whiteside, as he's called. I mean, the guy has two last names. So what do you want me to say about that? It's one thing I always say. There's very few far in between, a player being Pro Bowl caliber or star caliber when they have two fucking last names. There's a few guys that are okay, but that's pretty much where the line gets drawn as far as that goes. But JJ being on thin ice, it shouldn't really be as a surprise to anyone. It really shouldn't be. Obviously, the Eagles passed on DK Metcalf to draft a player like him, and, that's something they'll probably never live down. But here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing I want to say. I'm not saying the Philadelphia Eagles have a great wide receiving core by any stretch of the imagination. Because that simply isn't true. We have a lot of guys that are capable, but we have a lot of guys that just haven't proven anything quite yet. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, I'm not trying to say that they're terrible though, because like I just said, I do believe that there's a lot of capable guys in this group, but at the same time, you're looking at Devontae Smith, who's a rookie. No matter how people judge him, you saw what he did at Alabama last year, winning the Heisman Trophy, probably the best college football player. Last season, got the ESPY for best college athlete. So congratulations to him on winning that award and his already illustrious trophy case that he does have. But here's the thing, man. Devontae Smith, I do expect him to come in and do some great things. But that's really what the Eagles have been lacking, a true number one receiver, a guy who can win his one-on-one matchup. That's something that he hasn't really had, or this is something the team hasn't really had. So we're looking forward to seeing what he does. But there's a lot of guys in this group that's capable. Nothing flashy, but Greg Ward is reliable. What has Greg Ward done since getting his opportunity off the practice squad? And he's not the only one that's gotten his opportunity off the practice squad. Also, Travis Fulgham. So that's another person people have high expectations for. Coming in, but because Alshon Jeffrey came back to the mix, he did kind of get thrown out of that mix. So, yeah, personally, I think he's very talented, but he has not quite gotten there yet. So we're going to see how his progression goes. But, this receiving group, man, I think these guys all bring something different to the table. Devontae Smith has good speed. But is he considered a burner? No. I think Rager is more considered of a burner, more so than Devontae Smith is. But Devontae Smith is clearly the best route runner. He's got pretty good hands. I think Greg Ward has improved probably the most out of the guys that we currently have because he's been here for, I guess, more than a year. His route running has improved. His hands are good. He makes the catches that he has to make. And he gets the job done. He kind of reminds me of for any Eagles fans who were around when we had Jason Avant. Jason Avant he did not do anything special. There wasn't anything you watched the Eagles play and said, wow, Jason Avant. But what he did was he just caught the ball when he needed to catch the ball, get the first downs, keep the chains moving, so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking for Greg Ward to really step into a role and be that reliable guy on some third downs that we're obviously going to need. So I see a lot of your guys' comments coming in. Harrison Grimm met up with him at the Sixers during the playoffs. Oh, Ben Simmons straight talk. We might get to that later, because I definitely do have some thoughts. What's up, Lindy End Zone? What's up, Matt? What's up? Grizz has obviously been here, and Big Play Slay. So yeah, good to see all you guys here tonight. But as far as JJ not making this, and the two guys I didn't get to was, obviously, you have Quez Watkins, who missed a lot of time due to injury, but when he got on the field, you could really see that this guy can affect the game with his speed. So you got a lot of guys that got some at least good speed. You can't really say anyone on this team is particularly slow when you look at the Eagles receiving core. I think it's a young group. I think it's a lot of guys that got a lot to prove. But J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, as far as him not making the team, it's not really that surprising. So now that we got that out of the way, that's really the only notable news that the Eagles have had until today. And a lot of you guys know what I'm about to be talking about. So just get ready. Just get ready for what I'm about to say. As far as the comments that were made by Michael Robinson, I believe it was. I got mixed up. I don't know why I called him James. I called him James Robinson. I know it's not David Robinson. David Robinson is one of the greatest centers in NBA history. Had a great career with the San Antonio Spurs, but I knew it wasn't him. So I was like, I couldn't remember what. I know it was a basic name. And obviously, I'm Philly Jim. I go by Jim primarily, but some people do call me by my given name, which is James. But I don't know why I had James in my head, but it was just kind of like James Robinson. I was like, yeah, that sounds right, but I got the wrong guy. So if there's any James Robinson people out there, sincerely apologize for the mix-up. But obviously, Michael Robinson is the guy that we want to be discussing here today. And I'm seeing you guys comments coming in, and Grizz avoiding getting kicked off YouTube, trying to keep it PG. If you were on Facebook, you would probably get banned for such a comment, but I don't think calling people hoes on YouTube is going to warrant as much of a reaction. But obviously, Michael Robinson was with the Seattle Seahawks, and he won the Super Bowl with them in Super Bowl. What was it? Super Bowl 47 or no? I think it was Super Bowl 48 against the Denver Broncos. So he was in that. He was a part of that Seattle run where they had the great defense led by Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, the quote-unquote Legion of Boom, Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch, Doug Baldwin, and some other guys that were there. So he really wasn't anything special as a player, but this really isn't about his playing career. But after he retired from the NFL, he landed a job as an analyst, as we have seen tends to be a thing that happens for a lot of past players. They go on and they get into the analyst TV industry. So, good for them. But here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing I want to say. He's talking like he's this big guy who's he's got all these credentials, he's got all these sources, he knows all the information, when he doesn't. Okay, he's only been retired for a few years now. He's only been with NFL Network for a few years now. So he's over here talking like he really has all this information. It's not true. He's just trying to push a narrative because that's what a lot of people believe. A lot of people just don't believe Nick Sirianni is a good head coach. They just don't believe he's a good head coach. They just don't believe he has what it takes to get it done. And, people are always entitled to their opinion. If you have a real reason for why you think that, that's okay. Because not every coordinator who's an up-and-coming coordinator, that's an up-and-coming head coach candidate, not all of them succeed. A lot of them succeed. A lot of them don't succeed. It's just how it happens in the NFL. Okay? It's not something that is really predictable. But if you have a real reason, like, I just don't think he has the experience, that's one thing. But you're over here trying to push an agenda. You're over here trying to push a narrative that, there's a lot of players that just don't believe in him. And that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Everything that, until today, everything that's pretty much been said about Nick Sirianni has been pretty positive. A lot of people are very excited about what he brings to the table. He's kind of like, he's a football nerd. Now, Doug Peterson was a great players coach. He was great, and all the players loved him, and he did win a Super Bowl with us. But the thing that always held him back was he wasn't an X's and O's guy. He didn't always know exactly what he was talking about, okay? And, a lot of his play calling, let's face it, it was bad. It was bad. So they brought in a guy who is an X's and O's kind of guy. He loves the game of football. All he does is talk football. That's all he does. And the players have gravitated around him. They've shown their support. They think that he's a guy that can get them in the right direction and put these players in the best position to be successful. So there really hasn't been any grumblings. If you guys believe this report, which I'm sure most of us probably don't believe this report, and it's not just because we're trying to be overly positive fans or whatever. It's just that the report doesn't add up. The report doesn't add up. He's just pushing a narrative. I remember when he had his initial press conference, people have talked shit about him doing the whole rock, paper, scissors shoot thing with measuring competitiveness, which does sound a little goofy, I'm not going to lie, but, people read too much into stuff like that. Talking about that doesn't have anything to do with your ability as a coach. You coach on the field. If Nick Sirianni comes in and he does bad game planning, preparing for teams, putting these players in position to be successful, then that's going to be a problem. That's something we'll revisit if that is the case. But here's the thing. I think he's going to come in. He's going to do a good job. It's his first year, so we are going to give him some time. We're going to be patient with him. There's not, extremely high expectations. It's not like we have a lot of great players on this roster. A lot of players that we do have, I would say, are not horrible, but are unproven. But if they can prove they can do something, then this team can be dangerous in the NFC East, because the NFC East is any team's division, any team in this division. This is their division to win. Whether it's Washington, whether it's Dallas, us, or the Giants. Even the Giants, who I sincerely do not believe it's going to be them in the end. And, obviously you guys saw about a title. I am going to be talking about the AFC North later, so we're going to be going north, south, east, west, at least once a week. Maybe on Tuesday, Wednesday nights. I'm not exactly sure yet. But it's kind of besides the point what I'm talking about. But Nick Sirianni, I think he's going to do a fine job. I think we're going to be right there to win this division. And we'll go from there, man. We don't know what's going to happen yet. We don't know how injuries are going to affect the team. We don't know how injuries are going to affect other teams in the division. So that's always something you got to look forward to. But I feel very excited about this season. I think this team's going to be more fun to watch than it was a year ago. And yes, I do think the Eagles can possibly win the NFC East. I don't think it's beyond their reach by any stretch. So I just feel like Michael Robinson is trying to get his name out there. He's trying to push a narrative. He's trying to get everybody to come after him. Like, you know how Philly fans are. They're very reactive when comments like this are made. So they're going to be in his mentions and they're going to be saying, you're a clown. You don't know what you're talking about. It is what it is. But I would give my honest opinion on it, and that would be this. He's not really saying anything. He's just pushing an agenda. He's just pushing a narrative, and trying to get other people from the outside to buy into it and try to make him look like he has a little bit of credibility. But he doesn't. So just take it with a grain of salt. It's not that big of a deal. People are going to always talk shit. It is what it is. But this team is going to go out there and play, and they have a favorable schedule. They're coming back healthy. They're getting Lane Johnson back. They're getting Brooks back. Two guys they pretty much didn't have. Brooks missed the whole season, torn Achilles for the second time in the last couple of years. Lane Johnson had ankle surgery, but he really never recovered 100% from his surgery, so he's kind of in and out of the lineup, and then they just pretty much shut him down for the season. Different offensive line every game. Jalen Hurts spending off season working with these guys, getting them in getting better chemistry with the guys around him. He's got his college teammate Devontae Smith coming in as a first-round pick. I think they're going to surprise people and make things happen. And the defense, they've made some good additions too. I really love the addition of Anthony Harris and a lot of the other moves we made. The main thing that concerns me with the defense is the opposite corner of Darius Slay. Can they get a guy like a Richard Sherman to come in and contribute to this team? We'll go ahead and see. I think they're going to wait it out, but I definitely think that's something we got to look at. But the Eagles are not going to be as unbearably bad to watch as they were last season. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the AFC North, because I don't know. You guys can let me know what you're thinking over here in the comment section. But I normally don't take notes, but I've actually taken notes this time. About the AFC North. So, obviously, you had 3 teams make the playoffs from the AFC North last year. You had Pittsburgh, and then you had Pittsburgh was they were the AFC North champs, I believe. And then you had Baltimore, also Cleveland, who were wild card teams. You know, obviously Baltimore went on the road and they won a game at Tennessee, the AFC South champs. So Lamar won his first playoff game, and you know he kind of had a rough performance against Buffalo on the road there. But you know what? I think Baltimore is a great team. They have their key losses were Yannick Ngakoue, who was a guy that the Eagles really had their radar on for. But obviously, I believe he's with the Las Vegas Raiders. Almost said Oakland Raiders again, but I've kind of gotten used to them being in Vegas now. But the Las Vegas Raiders, they added Yannick Ngakoue. They also lost Matthew Judon. And one of the really areas of concern for the Ravens has been the wide receiver position. So they went out in free agency. They added Sammy Watkins, who, you know, he was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft many years ago. But his injuries they've prevented him from being the player that everyone thought he could be. He's had some good moments in Kansas City, but as far as we know, you know, Andy Reid is a masterful offensive mind. He puts players in great positions to be successful. So, you know, Sammy Watkins, can he perform outside of Kansas City in that scheme with Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball? We're going to have to see. But I do think that's probably better than what they've had at the position. I'm not even sure exactly who their best wide receiver has been the last couple of years. They drafted Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. But you know, he's had some issues. He hasn't really panned out as far as being a true number 1 wide receiver. So also in the draft, adding Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver from Minnesota, who was pretty much really overshadowed because of the great play of Devontae Smith, winning the Heisman Trophy as a wide receiver. I think that was the first time since, who was it? Desmond Howard with Michigan that won the Heisman as a receiver, the last receiver before Devontae. But, you know, Rashad Bateman was a great pickup for the Ravens. So I think the Ravens and the Browns are really going to be the 2 teams that's going to be contending for this top spot in the AFC North. Obviously, the Browns really, really surprised people. You know, ever since they had the offseason where they made all the moves and they got Jarvis Landry and they got Odell Beckham Jr. on the same team, obviously they've been raising a lot of eyebrows, and people have wondered, you know, is this the year the Browns are really going to turn it around? And a lot of people just maintain the same thought process as far as, The Browns are the Browns. The Browns have been losing for as long as they've been losing, but the Browns really surprised a lot of people. They won a playoff game and almost beat Kansas City at Kansas City to almost advance to the AFC Championship. Fortunately, some calls went against them. Excuse me. Unfortunately, some calls did go against them, so they weren't able to advance to the AFC title game. But that touchback in that game really came back to haunt them. So Cleveland, I think if Baker Mayfield is able to maintain the level of play he had last year, or hopefully advance his game to the next level, that's what you're going to be looking for the Cleveland Browns. But their defense has a lot of good players. I love Denzel Ward. I think he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Myles Garrett, one of the best pass rushers in the league. You could see him come in and potentially be a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I actually have Myles Garrett as my pick to be the Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL this season. That's actually, I don't think it's a stretch by any means. And then they went out and they add some pieces to that pass rushing group. When you talk about a championship team, even as far as the Philadelphia Eagles, how did the Philadelphia Eagles win that Super Bowl? They had a deep pass rush rotation. They went out and added Takk McKinley, who hasn't panned out with the Atlanta Falcons. He's a former first-round pick, though. He's got talent. Can the coaches put him in a position to be great? We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's very possible with Takk McKinley. On top of that, you also have Jadeveon Clowney, who was a number 1 overall pick. But he absolutely has not been, the great pass rusher that everyone wanted him to be. But as far as him being a rotational guy at this point in his career, surely he can do enough for the Cleveland Browns for what they're looking for. Myles Garrett is going to get all the attention. He's going to draw double teams, sometimes even triple teams. That's how dominant he is. That's how much you got to count for Myles Garrett. But the other guys, can they do enough to get after the quarterback on the defensive side? And then you got guys like Denzel Ward in the secondary, who's going to get the job done. So as far as the AFC North, it's very tough, man. It's very tough for me to choose between the Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. But I think the Steelers are going to be the third place team. They lost a lot of guys in free agency. They lost a lot of people up front on their offensive line. They lost Marquise Pouncey. He obviously retired. They cut Dave DeCastro. He was a former All-Pro. He was a former Pro Bowler at the guard position. Lost Alejandro Villanueva, who actually signed with the Baltimore Ravens. So the Steelers' offensive line has taken a step back. Ben's getting older. I just don't think Ben Roethlisberger has what it takes anymore. And then you got guys they got a young receiving core. You got guys who are talented, like Chase Claypool. He's very talented. He had 4 touchdowns against the Philadelphia Eagles this season. But that can be attributed to Jim Schwartz putting Nate Gary on him in a big situation. But that is also besides the point. He's talented. He's got what it takes. But as far as the TikTok boys, the Steelers wide receiving group, I've been with this stage of his career. The offensive line is not looking as good. I just don't see how the Steelers finish any better than third. And then obviously the Bengals drafting Jamar Chase, who was obviously, Joe Burrow's boy. I understand why you do that. They've got that chemistry. They already know each other very well. But just hear me out here. You have a guy like Penei Sewell on the board. Your quarterback is coming off of a major injury. He has a major injury. Tears multiple ligaments. He didn't just tear his ACL. He tore pretty much every ligament in his knee. And you draft a wide receiver with that pick. I just don't know if that was the right decision to make. And it's not because I don't think Jamar will be great. It's just because when your quarterback is coming off of a severe injury like that, you have to prioritize keeping him protected. He's a young guy. He's got a lot of football left in his career. What's going on, PGG? Glad you could join us here tonight. What's going on, Big D, as well? But you got to protect your quarterback at all costs, especially when they're coming off of that type of an injury. So, as far as the AFC North goes, guys, I got the Cleveland Browns winning this division. I think they could win as many as 12 games. That's not to take anything away from the Ravens. I could see this going either way. But the Ravens, they will be in the playoffs as well in the AFC. They will win at least 10 to 11 games. Steelers, I can hardly see them winning 8 games. And the Bengals, I see them going 4-13. So let me know what you guys' thoughts are as far as the AFC North goes. But those are my predictions. So if I missed any comments, I'm going to go run through real quick. Big D thinks Cleveland is winning that division. Okay, that's a good pick. Raiders can't win in December. Yep. Warehouse definitely sucks. Well, hate that for you, man. And especially people in charge who are competent. Okay. Yep, Browns did very well even without OBJ. And yep, that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Is there's a narrative that has been going around about OBJ as far as, well, the Browns are better without OBJ. No, they're not. OBJ is one of the best receivers in the league. Okay, he doesn't make teams worse. He makes them better. Okay, so if OBJ is healthy, that's just going to give more targets for Baker Mayfield to throw to. And when OBJ is healthy, he is one of the best receivers in football. So to say a team's worse, that's just a very ignorant narrative. And I think the Browns are going to be a real problem. You got Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, probably the best running back duo in the NFL. It's going to be outstanding. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out. But yeah, guys, if you guys have any more thoughts, or if you don't have any more thoughts, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. I want to thank everyone that has come into the stream, a lot of the regulars. We are going to try to make, and I know I've said this, if you guys are a real fan of my channel, you have been there when I have said, we're going to do a live stream every week. But as we're getting closer to the NFL season, I'm going to try to do one division per week, as we wind down and we get ready for week 1 against the Atlanta Falcons. But we're going to start with the AFC North, NFC North, AFC South, NFC South, so on and so forth. So if you guys enjoy this stream, I really hope you did. So please leave a thumbs up. It will help the algorithm. It will help this get out to more people. With that being said, guys, I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate all the people that have stuck with me on my channel, even through the tough times. So with that being said, guys, I will be back. And next week we'll talk about the AFC or the NFC North, which will definitely be another conversation that we're looking forward to having.